Hello, everyone. Sorry, it's a little bit windy out. I was running late because I thought I had coffee in my office, and it turns out I did not. So I had to run next door to my little coffee shop. Great coffee if you ever find yourself in Surfside Beach, South Carolina, called Badass Coffee of Hawaii. Great stuff, great people. Hopefully, I figured out this mic situation. So yesterday I was trying to get it figured out, fancy new mic, and I couldn't. So hopefully this works because I noticed yesterday it was a little bit echoey. So if somebody is in the chat, hi Katie. I don't know if you're in the chats or if you're watching, but let me know how the audio is. Hi Katie, how's my audio? Is it good? Is it echoey? I don't even know how I would go about fixing it. Awesome. Okay, so audio is good. So I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. So I think I'm gonna live stream like every day now, mostly because YouTube demonetized me, and so that like motivated me because I just do the opposite of what everybody wants me to do. I don't know why I'm like this, but now I just want to do live streams every day. And actually, here's what it is. I'm trying to spend more time in my actual office. So I have an office gym. I have a bunch of stuff going on here because I make more money when I'm in my office. And I hate that, but it's the truth. So I'm trying to, and then the other thing is I have like severe ADHD. Like I can't sit in my office. So I have to actually have like little stretches of work combines with like a quick workout or a quick live stream or something to just kind of reset. So that's kind of my plan. But yeah, so YouTube, so I was monetized, but I never actually received any money. So I guess you have to reach like $100 before they will pay out. So I was at like 90 something, of course, and they demonetized me and said that my content was stolen. And I was like, okay, you want to talk about defamatory accusations? And that's what we're going to be talking about today in relation to Candace Owens. But you can't, they don't tell you what was stolen. So there's like an appeal process that you can go through that I'm probably not going to go through because I really don't care. Because I actually run a legitimate business that's not YouTube and that's not podcasting. And honestly, I just like doing this and I like connecting with people. And if my information can help other people, then that's cool. But I don't really look at it as making, a money maker or anything like that. Other than maybe some indirect marketing for my actual business, Immaculate Investigations out here in South Carolina. So today I want to talk about Candace Owens. And I listen, I was not going to go here. I promise you I wasn't going here. Because I think it's well covered. I think it's outrageous. To be honest with you. But actually, I don't know if I believe her. I don't really have strong opinions on it. But I am deeply entertained by this whole fact that the president of France is suing Candace Owens. And I'm entertained by that. I was super entertained by the French Legion accusation, super entertained by that. So then this morning, doing something totally unrelated, mind you, I'm trying to redesign my website. So I'm trying to get some examples of basically companies that are where I want to be one day and what their websites look like. I think that's what I was doing. So anyway, long and short led me to this Nardello and Company, who I've never actually heard of before. Let me just make sure that's an actual name. Now, there's some that I have heard about. Jules Kroll, he's a big one up in New York. Nardello, Nardello in Company. Now, evidently, Mr. Nardello is a ex-New York prosecutor who has now gone to the private sector. And they're kind of classified as this top-tier global investigations firm, kind of known for being a little bit shadowy. They have some bland offices, a substantial global footprint. So they have offices in New York, DC, London, Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, Los Angeles, etc. And they have worked some big ones. So just to give you an idea of what they have done, they have done the FTX ordeal. So the FTX collapsed. That's the crypto There was a whole thing behind that. Long of the short, when that collapsed, there was some litigation because they were not giving back to their investors and their creditors, or their investors basically. So they were retained by the new management of FTX after the founder's arrest to track down the remains of the FTX's worldwide assets. So that's interesting. That's a big one. They did Purdue Pharma bankruptcy. They do a lot of defamation. That's what it seems like. So apparently they helped unmask the operator behind an anonymous gossip defamation website after a multi-year legal battle, and that was Tattle Life. And I think that was a group of victims that hired them. And then they do a lot of internal anti-corruption, fraud, FCPA investigations, and some risk management stuff. So that's kind of their resume. Now, in order to understand this, I had to go back and figure out how they got involved. So the Macrons hired Nardello and Company to basically, so when something will go to litigation, first of all, usually it's pre-litigation. So if somebody is playing around with the idea of suing somebody, they'll oftentimes, the lawyer will tell them, like, the first step is to hire a PI to see if there's actually any solid evidence of your accusations, so that nobody wastes their time for a case that's just going to get dismissed. So that we'll do a lot of pre-litigation. Now, if the attorney decides there is a case, then it comes down to more of, I call it the dirt digging mission. So aside from collecting the evidence, you'll just investigate. The PI will investigate whatever the attorney needs them to. So interviewing witnesses, tracing relationships to see if anybody else was involved. I would imagine for this one, there was a lot of social media, preservation of social media posts, things like that. And so it's important to preserve that sort of evidence the right way, because that could, if you don't have all the metadata and stuff like that, well, good luck in court. So I'm assuming that's what the majority of what they did. They probably also dug into her background, right? So a lot of times these things get ugly, and you're going with, does she have any prior lawsuits for the same sort of deal? What's Candace's background? Does she have any hidden pending litigations? What's going on? A lot of times they'll try to assassinate the character of the perpetrator. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but that's true. And then also so obviously with somebody as well known as Candace Owens, this might not be the case, but a lot of lower level cases will do a financial analysis. Does this person even have assets? Where are these assets? Are they worth suing? If I sue them, am I going to collect on that lawsuit, on that judgment? And obviously the case of Candace, you would imagine that she would, but there would still have to be some investigating as far as, where are her assets? Are they hidden behind different corporations, different LLCs? Are they in her name personally? What's going on with that? So that's a big one. Now, there was an article published in the Financial Times that I found fascinating because they wanted to keep bringing up Russia, and it was very interesting. And it just kind of reads like satire. I'm trying, guys. I'm trying, but it says lawyers for Emmanuel and Brigitte hired investigators to research the U.S. podcaster Candace Owens. Now let's talk about who the lawyers are. So they hired, who did they hire? Let me see. I had it off the top of my head. They're out of Delaware, and all they do is defamation. Locke law from Claire Locke. So they're in Delaware. And so a lot of people were like, and I think I even saw Candace bring this up. And let's talk about Delaware, because she was like, why did they file this in Delaware? Like, she didn't know. And I found that odd because evidently, now I haven't verified this, but evidently her LLCs are in Delaware, which is common. So just because you don't live in Delaware doesn't mean you can't have an LLC there. You can file for an LLC in any state you want. A lot of people, which I don't really understand, I do, but I don't. So if I had a business where I was planning on suing people, I would start my LLC in Delaware. If I had a business like which I might get sued, probably not Delaware as the best option, in my opinion, strategically. They do have a good judicial system, but it's definitely different than there's just less leeway. Like they know what they're doing. So it's not there's not going to be much room for negotiation, or I would say I don't even think they do juries. Someone correct me on this. I don't think they have like juries for like their business court. They have like a separate court for business, from what I understand. Let me see if I can chat GPT it really quick. Um, Delaware. Okay, hold on. So they, going back to Clearlock, just while I'm reading this, trying to scroll, they do a lot of Fortune 500 governors, high political celebrities. I think they have global like media outlets. Okay, so Delaware. Delaware courts have clear authority, minimal jurisdictional challenges, direct access to her business records. So, yeah, because when I had ChatGPT that before. So, yeah, there's no jury. So, Delaware is famous globally for having the best corporate court system in the United States. No juries, expert judges, fast timelines, high evidentiary standards, judges with deep experience in corporate wrongdoing, fraud, and false statements. So that's important because a lot of times you can explain anything to the judge, but if they don't have the capacity to understand it, we have this problem in where I live in South Carolina. So to the point where a lot of the attorneys will not bring fraud to the court system because and that's the benefit of hiring someone like me. Like you have to just break it down so simply that my 10-year-old, you're my 12-year-old almost can understand it. Because if they don't understand fraud and they don't understand finances, which a lot of people don't, it's very hard to get a fair ruling, and then you start dealing with appeals. So that is actually a good thing. Judges with deep experience in corporate wrongdoing, fraud, and false statements. They have stricter consequences for lies made through business entities. And so if you don't know the backstory, this is about her, and I touched on it a little bit yesterday, but Candace is saying that Brigitte Macron, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France's wife, is a man. Now, she didn't come up with this on her own. She got this information from a French journalist, Xavier Paul, something with a P, who evidently handed all this to her. He's also being sued, by the way. So it's this whole international thing. And I'll go back to the Russia connection or the Russia accusations, which I found weird, in a minute, because that was a big part of what those private investigators investigated and brought up in their investigation, which I found interesting because it just gives you some insight into the thought process behind this lawsuit, right? And what the Macron's angle was or is. And I haven't read the court documents. They should be public record. I should probably pull those up, but I was just more interested in the investigation itself. So, okay. So Delaware jurists dislike corporate misconduct. I think that's hard to prove. Okay. So they chose Clearlock in Delaware because Owens money, companies, and legal exposure all live there, making it the strongest, cleanest court. So that's why they chose Delaware. So going back to this whole thing. So they hired investigators to research the US podcaster Candace Owens as they prepared to sue her, leading to, so yeah, they did pre-litigation before they filed their lawsuit. And they will probably also work it ongoing as far as gathering witness statements or whatever the situation is, even monitoring, right, to see if she's still talking about it. That's a big thing. So including her ties to French far-right personalities and her popularity in Russia state media, which I didn't know, so I found that interesting. So her central claim is that Brigitte Macron was born male and has since gotten an operation to become a female. So The investigation carried out by, and this is the Financial Times, by the way, the investigation carried out by US-based firm Nadell and Company was produced before the French president and first lady filed their lawsuit against Owens last month. Some details from the investigation were shared with the Financial Times, as well as describing her links to the far right in France. Investigators outlined her connections to right-wing populist figures in the US and UK and her online interactions with a Russian nationalist. Okay, so Dan Nardello, who must be the founder, he's the executive chair of Nardello and Company, and he's a federal prosecutor, ex-New York federal prosecutor. He says the Macrons have brought this lawsuit with the full knowledge of who Owens is aligned with. Blah, blah, blah. So their decision to sue was driven in part by the Macrons' desire to understand why an American conservative podcaster had taken an interest in them. Their lawyer, Tom Clare, co-founder of defamation specialist firm Clare Locke, told the Financial Times. He said the research could also help explain to the jury the context in which Owens was making the claims. Now, Candace is saying, she says this, exactly how much money was spent to determine that out of a total of 12,704 tweets, I twice retweeted a Russian philosopher, or that out of hundreds of speaking events worldwide, I once spoke at a conference in Paris with Marianne Marshall. Now, and this is why I'm highlighting that, is just to show you what the nature of their investigation is. They will dig into everything. And so if something is specifically asked for or something comes up that could potentially be useful, it's highlighted in a report. And that's just how it goes. It's not personal to Kansas. It is how it works. That is what a investigations firm that especially deals in a lot of litigation does. So they outlines everything. So I call this a subject profile. Okay. So I do my own subject profiles, which in my little small area is unheard of. So that's because I have bigger aspirations to be the next Nardello. No, I'm just kidding. Well, not really, but I just do things very differently. So what I'll do is like a subject profile of, because a lot of times, here's what I always tell everybody. Data is cheap. Anybody can go online and dig up some tweets or dig up some whatever. What's invaluable and where investigators, and I separate myself from that term and almost classify myself as more of, and I would classify them as well as more as of like intelligence specialists or intelligence strategists, because what you're doing, data is cheap, discretion is priceless. You're interpreting that data for them. Okay. And so you're presenting them with a dossier, if you will. So I'll do like a subject profile of subject presents as a 36-year-old white male who has a complex history of geographic relocations spanning over the course of 5 years. Within the last 2 years, he has seemed to have settled down and has lived primarily in Horry County, South Carolina. He has purchased a home, blah, blah, blah. So I give them a whole like psychological, behavioral, political, social background. And so private investigators have access to a lot of this information that the general public doesn't. Voting history, voting registration history, cars, things like that. So it's just we have access to different stuff, social security numbers, things like that, utility hookups, that's a big one. So anyway, so that seems like what they did. So they outlined her shift from identifying as a liberal early in her career to becoming a conservative after what she said was harassment online. She became a vocal supporter of Donald Trump, but recently broke with the US president and said she was embarrassed to have campaigned for him. So the investigators examined the origins of the claim that Brigitte Macron was born male. So this would be like the defense, right? So every good strategy has an offense and a defense. The offense is going actively after Candace. What is this woman about? What is the dirt? Does she cheat on her husband? What are her weaknesses? Does she have a substance abuse problem? Does she have a history of being sued for libel and defamation? What is her dirt? And then that's the offense. And then the defense would be, how to make my client look better, how to disprove these claims and prove that it is in fact defamation, blah blah blah. So in a case like this would look like I would ask the client for a copy of the birth certificate, and I would send it to a specialist who specializes in birth certificate authenticity, stuff like that. Okay. So the investigators examined the origins of the claim that Brigitte Macron was born male. They found that while a Spanish blogger posted about it in May 2017, the idea gained traction in France from 2021. In late 2023, Xavier Poussard, Poussard, the former editor-in-chief of a French far-right fringe publication, who knows how far-right and fringe that is, called Fiat documents, I guess that probably means false documents or something, help spread the claims. And so what they'll want to do as the investigators, they'll want to look at like the origin, just like they did. So why are they saying these documents are false? Do they have witnesses? I want to interview the witnesses. Do they have somebody saying that they who worked at the whatever the office is called over there for vital records? Do they have somebody saying that they helped the Macrons falsify these documents? And if so, who is that person? I need to talk to them. Where do they live? I need to track them down. So that's where an investigator would come in. So an attorney just doesn't have access to these resources, especially when you're dealing with international stuff. These investigators would have to have somebody in France that knows the deal as part of their network. And they just don't have the time to be tracking these people down and things like that. So that's where an investigator would come in. So Poussard said in an online video in April 2024 that he had translated his work about Brigitte Macron into English and sent it to Owens and other Trumpists whom he did not name. And so this is the timeline building, right? So now you're building a timeline. When did this start? How did it flow? Who, what, when, where, why, how? These are all the questions you answer. The information he shared include the conclusions of his own investigation and several news stories from other media organizations, such as an article published by the Daily Mail that covered the claims. Okay, so he later wrote a book titled Becoming Brigitte, and that was the name of her docuseries or her podcast, whatever it was. So here was this Russia thing. So investigators found that once Owens' Becoming Brigitte series was released, Russian state-controlled outlets reported on it. And so I think that's probably where the connection dies. I don't think she sent it to him. I don't think it was intentional, but I will highlight this. It's just proof that Russia and foreign nations in general do watch everything we do over here. So you have to be a little bit careful because, and not just here, Europe, right? And so I'm of the opinion that Russia wants to undermine Western culture. Let's just leave it there, okay? So now you have this situation where they're pulling from Western media for their own agenda to undermine the president of France. Listen, whether she's a man or not, I didn't do this investigation, so I'm not commenting on that. But I'm just saying I don't think she has a connection to Russia. I think they just capitalized on it. And I think they do that in a lot of ways. And if you know anything about Soviet-style misinformation, this is a very common thing that they do. In this case, they weren't the ones who made up the misinformation or the information. They just kind of were the microphone for it or the megaphone for it. So Russia's RT, okay, so a television channel led by, let me just go back to this. So Russian state-controlled outlets reported on it. It was covered by Tsargrad, a television channel led by Konstantin Malovev, whom the researchers described as an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, they found. Russia's RT had posted about Owens more than 30 times since 2018. Maybe that's a lot. We don't know how much content they push out. Maybe that's a drop in the hat. We don't know. So we would need to put that in perspective. And so I would assume Candace has also hired investigators. That would be the smart thing to do. Hopefully her lawyer advised her to do that. And so what they're going to do, part of that is going to be putting things in perspective or gathering data that would help them and things like help her as the defense and stuff like that. And so, in a lot of times when you're an investigator, you come under attack because they want to discredit you and your services. So they'll look at your lawsuits as the investigations firm and all kinds of stuff. He's a ex-federal New York prosecutor. They'll look at all his cases. Is there any corruption in them? Things like that. And especially when you have these international complex cases and it's like, who's being paid by it? It's just, it gets real dirty. It gets real dirty. So it's going to be interesting. It definitely is. We'll see what comes out of it. But anyway, and here's the part about the assassination attempt, not to get off track, but French Foreign Legion, super interesting to me. And here's the thing. So would the Macrons hire the government intelligence, if you will, to do something like that? Because I think people would ask that, well, if they have access to like their version of the CIA and the French Foreign Legion, all this stuff, why wouldn't they just use them to do this? And the answer is because civil court is a lot different than anything else. And so you really need, and especially when you're crossing jurisdictions, they were right to hire a US-based company because the US-based company knows the laws and how litigation works here. Whereas other entities do not. So anyway, they did not. Oh, so here's the other thing. So it's almost like the assassination thing to me, you think they would do that before they filed the lawsuit? Because I don't know, maybe not. But I just think the timing's weird. Like there's pending litigation. It almost seems too obvious or too, like everybody's going to be like, if something does happen to her, people are going to be like, oh, France, like, hello. I don't know, maybe not. But that's the only thing that makes me question the narrative of that, because they're going through all this trouble. They're spending all this money. They're trying to bring this to civil court in the United States. And if it had gotten dismissed or something, maybe I could see that, but I don't know. So maybe they're mad. Maybe they thought this would scare her. And since she didn't shut up, they're mad about it. And now they're going to off her. God help us, God forbid. But that's what I could think of. So, all right. They did not find evidence. This is the investigators, Nardello. They did not find evidence that Owens had met Russian officials or state media personalities or had direct personal or business links to Russia. So I would say she's pretty cleared on that accusation. Like I said, I think it was just Russia taking the opportunity and running with it. But they did say she had interacted on social media with Alexander Dugin, who has a lot. I've covered him on this channel before. Him or his dad. I think one of them got killed. One of them got like assassinated. So it must be someone related to this Alexander. I'd have to go back and look, but back in the beginning of the war, and that they had like some interesting, that Dugin had some interesting philosophies as far as Russia taking over Europe, okay, and creating like a Russia-Asia continent. So not good things for the West. So Dugin, a Russian nationalist and philosopher, she apparently interacted with him on social media. I probably wouldn't put too much stock into that, but she reposted his posts. He reposted her posts. That's very indirect. I don't think that is dramatic or proves anything. The investigators also found Owens had connections with far-right politician Marianne Maréchal, the niece of French far-right leader Marine Le Pen. And here's the thing, guys. I don't know these politicians. Who knows what that means? So far right to a left-leaning person could literally mean somebody who believes that only men and women can get married. So it's hard to judge what that means. And these are all the things that need clarification, right? And so that's where investigators come in. What on a scale of 1 to 10, how far right is this person? Do they believe in extreme nationalism? Do they believe in fascism? Like, what do they believe in? Because again, I would say the pendulum has swung so far left that if you literally believe in the nuclear family, you're an extremist at this point. So this is junk to me, and I almost the Financial Times should be ashamed of themselves because it's not good reporting. And if you're going to make those accusations of somebody being a far-right politician, then you need to identify what you mean by that, and you need to define that in the course of your article, which they do not. So, and this is the problem with the media. This is the problem. And that could almost be, defamation. Like, you can't just throw that term out there with negative connotations, but again, whatever. So Owens was the headline speaker at the 2019 Convention de la Troit conference in Paris, organized again by far-right and nationalist organizations close to Martial, who also spoke at the event. Fine. I'm not impressed by that. The investigation also outlined Owens' online criticism of Ukraine's president, Vladimir Zelensky, including calling him a sociopathic, murdering welfare queen and describing him as the neighborhood crackhead. Now, is that, never mind. I'm not even going to get into that, but I think as American journalists and podcasters, they actually have a duty to comment, maybe not in that way, but to comment on the character, even if you will, as long as it's based in truth, of foreign presidents, if we are in fact giving them monetary support or getting involved in their conflicts, which it appears on both counts we are. So I don't see the issue with that, but it found Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, was reported to have been a guest of honor at Owens' wedding to George Farmer, the former boss of social media platform Parler. Oh, I actually did not know that. Whatever happened to Parler? Wasn't that like what was Parler? I feel like I was a part of that for a minute. But it was supposed to be like free speech, right? Because everybody was getting censored. I think that popped up around the pandemic. I didn't know. That's interesting that that's who she married. But I'm just highlighting that because this is how the investigation works. Nothing's safe. They probably dug into his entire life. I mean, if she has close family members, her father, her mother, where she went to school, her teachers, whoever influenced her, they're going to dig into all that, especially at this high level. Lower level, maybe somebody doesn't have the money to do all that and it's not necessary, but at this high level, they will. It highlighted her connection to Tucker Carlson, who has interviewed her online in her post about the brothers Andrew and Tristan Tate. The Macron's lawsuit filed in Delaware accused Owens of publishing falsehoods, including that Brigitte was born male under the name Jean-Michel Tronou. The French president and first lady are willing to travel to Delaware to appear in person for the trial. Okay, well, good for them. I hope they can get some French fries while they're here. I'm joking. I'm going to look up. All right, so here's the lawsuit. They did link to something, and I would have to go and read that myself to see what's in there. But I'm assuming the only leg they have to stand on, defamation lawsuits are historically hard to prove. They really are. So, I mean, the only thing they're going to stand on is this, I would assume, is this gender issue, because that's verifiable, right? So they could allegedly, prove that with documents, DNA tests, things like that. But I will tell you this, her lawyer better have somebody as high caliber as Nardello to make sure to fact check that, to make sure that all of those documents and all of that proof is legit. Because I would assume, being the president of France, you would have connections to be able to manufacture things. So that's what I would say about that. So yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to get into today. The reasons why you would hire a private investigator in litigation, especially at this level, and what they do. And private intelligence, I tell everybody this, private intelligence makes the world go round. And people don't believe me when I say that, but it's the truth. There is nothing that happens on a large scale that you hear about in the news that isn't somehow touched by private intelligence. Whether it's being monitored, whether it was initiated, whether it's, and you have the dark and dirty side of this, right? So you have companies like Black Cube. That is a private intelligence firm founded by two ex-Mossad agents that do a lot of dirty work for Israel. That isn't official. That can't be plausible deniability, right? That can't be linked back to the actual country itself. So, for example, they got caught not too long ago when all those protests were going on college campuses. They were allegedly not hired. They were allegedly approached, but not hired. I don't know how much of that I believe, to be at those protests, to report back to Israel. Okay. Now, maybe it stopped there, maybe it didn't get anywhere. But you also have to look at a situation where there's agitators, there's people with different agendas trying to influence things. I talked about that yesterday. I talked about France being notorious for influencing politics, for influencing, having giant influence networks. These are all intelligence operatives. These are all people who are skilled in psychology. They're all skilled in human intel, how to blend in, how to influence people, all of this stuff, all the stuff you see in the movies, the CIA, all of that. That is done mainly by private contractors in high stakes matters. Just what it is. Because of plausible deniability, because it can't be sanctioned and traced back to, it's harder to be sanctioned, traced back to the actual government. So that's where we're at today. Like I said, I think I'm being shadow banned too. So I only got like 30 views on my last one. I think I got like 8 before that. So I'm definitely being banned. So anyway, feel free to share my stuff if anybody's interested in this topic. And I guess I'll just update you guys if something new comes out of it, or if I do have the time to go actually read the lawsuit and see how I would approach it as from her defense sort of thing. I don't know where she stands. I know that she was saying that she was going off the air for a while. I don't know if she's back. Like I said, I don't follow her that closely, but why I'm covering it is not so much for gossiping reasons. It's because I've never seen a foreign president sue a podcaster in America before. And I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to make sense of that in my mind. And I guess I didn't know that a foreign national could sue an American in a Delaware court system. Like, I guess I just didn't know that. I don't know. I guess since it happens on American soil, that's the jurisdiction, I guess, but weird stuff. And it's all of these, the internet and the global connectivity and all this stuff brings up super interesting jurisdictional issues and just legal issues within the judiciary system, because no two countries have the same system. So it's like, what do you do? And I'm not one of those people that believes in like a world court or anything like that. I understand there's a lot of problems with it, but when stuff like this happens, it's like, it's hard to figure it, it's unprecedented. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of it, and I'll be following it. So hope y'all have a great weekend. I'm going to work out in my little office gym and going home because it's Saturday. So maybe I'll be back tomorrow on Sunday, but if not, definitely Monday. And maybe I'll give an update. We'll see. I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet, but I'll be back. So all right, have a great day, and questions, comments in the comment section. I'll try to reply if they are worthy of reply. If anybody even sees this, or I might just be talking to myself. I think Katie's still here. Bye, Katie. Love you. Have a great weekend. Stay warm. It's got to be cold up there because it is like 37 here. So I'm wearing a jacket still in my office. It's freezing. But all right, have a good day. Talk to you later.